Hey everyone. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to quickly tell you about the Sonic Days conference in Denmark. I just returned from my adventure to Europe to be a part of the conference, and I want to send out a big, massive thanks for having me and to all the people that came to the live taping of the Tonebenders episode we did while there. I'm not sure when it will get released on the feed, but I can tell you it was a really great talk. I can't wait for the rest of you to hear it. I also got to do 2 presentations, one on Tonebenders and one on doing audio posts for animated series. The audiences for both were super supportive and stayed with me as I found my feet during the presentations. It was my second time at Sonic Days, and this year was even better than last year. I met so many amazing people doing interesting sound work in Denmark, Sweden, Germany, Norway, the UK, Portugal, and lots of other places. I hope I get to do it again next year. So once again, big thanks for all the support and positivity from everyone I met in Denmark. You're listening to Tonebenders Sound Design Podcast, presented by Sound Ideas. This is the show where we talk with the sonic artists behind our favorite films, games, and series. This Black Friday, Sound Ideas is offering its biggest savings of the year. Enjoy 50% off all proprietary sound libraries and memberships. Sound Ideas' best deal yet on world-class audio collections. But that's just the beginning. Each week, Sound Ideas will spotlight one of their most popular libraries with an exclusive limited-time discount. Visit sound-ideas.com regularly to discover which library is featured and grab these weekly specials before they're gone. Hello and welcome to Tonebenders Sound Design Podcast. My name is Tim Muirhead and I am excited for this episode as it features a few interviews based on films that I saw at the Toronto International Film Festival back in September. All of these interviews were done in person, face-to-face, which is always my favorite way to do these talks. In addition to the interviews in this episode, I was also able to do many more that will be coming out as full feature episodes with the sound teams behind films like Frankenstein, Hamnet, Sentimental Value, and more. In this episode, though, I will talk about 3 films that might be difficult for Tonebenders listeners to track down. I'm not sure if they will all even have an international theatrical run, but these talks don't contain any real spoilers. We just talk about the sound moments in general terms and not how they play into the overall story. So I hope you will give this episode a listen and get an appreciation for the hard work that was done on these films, and then go out of your way to try and find them at some point. They are all worthy films of your time. We will start with an Oscar winner, Sylvain Bellmare, who won his Oscar for Arrival. And today we're going to talk about a cool Quebecois film called Lovely Day. On the surface, Lovely Day is basically a rom-com, which isn't a genre known for complicated sound work. But this particular film actually has a couple subplots of characters dealing with anxiety, and sound takes over for these sequences and gets the audience inside the heads of the people on screen. After that, I will talk with Tove Lidman and Therese Gylfe, who came to TIFF from Sweden to support their film Forestera. This is a unique film that has elements of the supernatural within the confines of a family drama taking place on the stunning beaches of Majorca, Spain. They have some really interesting stories of how they manipulated the constant waves on the shore, and also how they handled the possibly supernatural moments. Some real creativity and thought went into the sounds in this film. Plus, they were brave enough to volunteer to go to the locations where the film was shot and record all the ambiences for the film from scratch. That's a tough gig to have to fly to one of the most beautiful places in the world and hang out on the beach while making wonderful recordings. Tove and Therese, you're real heroes. Finally, I will talk with María, Alejandra, Rojas, and Arturo Salazar about their sounds in the retro-futuristic film The Blue Trail. This is a sci-fi film that takes place in the third world, where the people might not be benefiting from all that new technology brings with it. It's kind of like a feature-length Black Mirror episode in that it deals with areas of the future that are more grounded than, like, laser battles. They had to design the sounds for boats that are adapted from current times into the tech of the future. Plus, the entire film was ADR'd, not because of bad set audio, but because that is how the director likes to work. He wants to control and rethink every line of dialogue to make sure it's where it needs to be. So let's get to this episode. First up, we will hear from Sylvain Bellmare. He was last on Tonebenders to talk about his groundbreaking work on Denis Villeneuve's Arrival back in 2018. So, Sylvain, it's great to speak with you again.
Thank you, Timothy.
It's been a little while. The last time we spoke was back in 2018.
My goodness.
Yeah, it's been a while. And that was about your work on the sound groundbreaking film Arrival. But today we're here to talk about a very different film. It's called Lovely Day, or Mille Secrets, Mille Dangers. Do you want to say it in French? So it
Mille
sounds...
Secrets, Mille Dangers.
There we go. This is a film about a wedding. It's not about the bride and groom's love, really. It's about the groom and the best man's love in a weird way, like a platonic love. But like they love and hate each other at the same time. And the groom is kind of the person that on the surface is put together. He's marrying the pretty girl. He's written books, but kind of inside his life is a chaos. And then the best man, his external world is chaos, but he seems to kind of know who he is inside in a weird way. So there's a weird kind of dichotomy flip there. There's lots of really cool sound work in the film, but let's talk about, start off by talking about a scene that I really like the sound of. This is a scene a little bit early in the film, and at this point, the groom, it's the night before his wedding, and he's trying to fall asleep. This scene is really excellent for sound because it calls for kind of a collage montage of sound of what's keeping him awake. But what I found really interesting is that the script leading up to that scene drops all these little hints of things that can be part of that sound montage.
Completely.
Yeah, do you want to talk about putting that together?
Yeah, it's also because it's also the concept that it was an important child memory that he had, that he remembered, because he had some problem with his stomach. I don't know in English how to use it, maladie de Crohn in French, Crohn's disease. Yeah. So he suffered a lot. So he remembered that moment, because before his wedding, he started to have pain in his stomach. And he remembered that moment that in the bathroom when he was a kid, and you have the ventilator that making that kind of big noise around him. And this noise is really confusing for him, and it's a harsh sound. That it's like, pretty bad.
So this is like a ceiling fan that's kind of not spinning properly. It's making a sound as it spins, and it's a really cool sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry to keep going.
No, it's okay. That's important. This will come back later on in the film, but more in a very ominous way sometimes, when he kind of have memories during the wedding. And it's a bit too much subtle for me. I think we could have pushed that a little bit in the mix, but still it's there. And it's very important because he's going to need a sort of a liberation later on about that disease. To make having a happy life with his wife, he will need to resolve some problem, because his Crohn's disease is one thing, but it's also this sort of very toxic environment with his mom and dad. So there is this link between that sound and how that sound will help him to liberate himself from this pain, sort of. So it was pretty interesting. And it's so interesting in sound design, because that ceiling fan is a sort of thing that the sound of that can be pretty good to making someone feeling bad about an emotion. It's a perfect kind of thing. You have this metal squeak out of it with this like harsh rumble on it. I think it's a great kind of piece to do design on that. 7-8 minutes in the film before this scene happens, just one character kind of casually mentions that they're trying to fix the air conditioner because it's making a whoomp whoomp sound. Yes. And like, it's just kind of an offhanded statement. Yeah. And then you get to use that whoop whoop sound and like make it up and build it into this whole... And the good thing is that, in fact, this whoop whoop sound that he mentioned do not exist. Mm-hmm. He remember a thing that is not there, and his friend and his future wife are like, hey, but what the hell? We don't hear anything. And he will come back later on during the film, during the ceremony, tell that to his parents, hey, we have the whoom whoom sound, but in fact, it's not happening. It's stuck in his memoirs about that terrible moment. And I think it's interesting about how sometimes you're afraid about something will happen, but it's not. Mm-hmm. It's like you expect the sound will come to you. And I think it could be almost a good thing about a horror movie. You will play with sound that do not exist. It's interesting. I'm saying that because I have 2 horror movies to do in the next 2 years. And I think about how you bring good sound for a horror movie. So
if you watch the trailer for this movie, I think anyone that just watched the trailer would think it was a fairly straightforward, like, wedding movie.
Yeah.
But one of the ongoing plot points within the film is that our groom, our main character, gets panic attacks.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a completely interior thing that sound has to tell the story of.
Yeah.
There are a few scenes where like some crazy camera work is done and tables are spinning.
Yeah.
But for the most part, sound has to carry that whole plot element. How did you even begin to tackle that? What were your conversations like with the director?
Yeah, of course. And we had many challenges because in Philip's film, I did most of his features in the past 30 years, so very close friends. And every single Philip's film, there is a lot of dialogue. He's really like characters having a lot of lines. You feel comfortable with that kind of movie. So in a sense, doing sound design within that, it's quite a challenge because more you have dialogues in a film and less sound design could be that important. I mean, it's complex to bring a complex sound design within a many dialogues in a film. So it's always been, it's a challenge. So we had to build it knowing that, and plus the music is quite present, and it's I think the score is pretty good by Martin Léon, a very good composer from Montreal. But still, it was a challenge. So we had to be quite subtle, and I think I'm quite happy with the result, even if I think it's a bit too subtle. But I think we played a lot with sort of sensation that sound can come, and having a little push at the mix, making the presence of sounds quite there, even if we kind of contain that a little bit. And I think we basically played a lot with the fan was very important with that within the process, even if it's still very, very, very subtle. The fan was the main sound that we use. The ceiling fan was the main sound that we use. Even the crowd sound was important too, because there's a lot of moment when the crowd is like too present that bring his anxiety at the marriage also. And it's so interesting, the wedding concept. There's so many people that they need to do the wedding, but they have an anxiety moment to imagine their wedding. It's also too much pressure on the groom and on the bride. So it's sort of thing that you expect it could be a nice day, but it could be difficult. It's not the first time so the crowd was important, and I was quite happy about how we were able sometimes to bring the sound of the crowd a bit like scary, still very subtle. So yeah, that's kind of thing that we working on was interesting.
Well, the film plays around with its timeline. We don't necessarily see things in order. In fact, we go back 19 years in time. But the majority of the film, maybe not even the majority, a lot of the film, it takes place on the wedding day. And we see certain moments happen multiple times from different perspectives. And the crowd is different in the different perspectives. So.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's a very cool way that you tackled that. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. It's interesting. It's good that you realize that. And not many people will realize that. It was an intention by the director because he switched the attention from if we saw like scene A at a certain part of the film, then going back to scene A later on, he wanted to change the focus on their character. For instance, I do that quite often. I think it's super powerful in a silent moment when you try to bring down the faders quite a lot to make it a sort of sense. I like to use Foley as a sense of pinpoint the character really much. So having a very silent sort of feeling, but then you bring a little Foley to make the focus on a specific character. I hope it brings the audience to focus on where we want the audience to focus at that moment. I really love Foley for that. A simple, take your glasses just on the table like that could be so simple. Sorry, I didn't manage.
Got a fingerprint on my lens. Okay, let's calm down. No, I'm just kidding.
And it's kind of good thing. I really like this method. I try to not use it too much because it's the same trick every single film, but still. And it's a nice way to focus differently while you have different backgrounds. For instance, your question was more about the crowd, because the crowd, sometimes it's shot differently also. It's not exactly the same way. So we need to follow what the image did. It's also one of the challenges of sound design. Even if you want to repeat the same scene, you realize that the camera did something quite a bit different. So you have to be a bit different. So it's always that's our life, we follow image. So
you mentioned earlier that you use the ceiling fan from the bathroom to create the anxiety in other scenes. Were you manipulating that sound? Like, how are you repurposing it?
Basically, I did a lot of pitch shifting, but also I brought a lot of sort of loudness bass to it, and of course multiple layers. of course. The ceiling fan, we started with multiple layers, tried to make it as one. So it's always complex when you have a multiple layer sound to make it one layer. At the end, when we arrive at the end, especially for the zoom in, the ceiling fan at the end, it's only one single layer. But the loudness part of it, the big bass part of it was definitely a layer that we kind of contain at the end. But the manipulation was more about vari speed and pitch shifting instead of I had a good sound that the manipulation was not that big beside vari speed and pitch shifting, which is a sort of manipulation, but it's a type of sound that I really like, metal sound like that. I'm not the only one. It's not different from my colleagues, but it's such a great thing. Working with metal, it's so good.
You can get emotional sounds out of it.
Me too. Yeah. It's something that it's touched you quite a lot. That I think I don't know why it's always complex to understand an emotion with sound, but for sure metal sound it touched me really much, really, I have to say.
This film was mixed by Bernard Garifay-Strobel, who you've worked with lots. Yes. And the previous time you were on Tonebenders, he was on with you. You mentioned that you like to use the technique of pulling everything back, playing the Foley. How do you communicate that in your tracks so that he knows that's what you're trying to do?
It's basically, Bernard and I are a very close colleague. We did, I don't know how many films for so long. We did our first official feature almost 20 years ago. And before that, Bernard started his career with his dad. His dad's name was Hans-Peter Strobel, with Austrian immigrant that landed in Canada, in Montreal, and he was a very important mixer. His dad in the 70s, 80s was one of the most important mixer. Let's say, I remember going to New York in the mid-90s and people knew about Hans-Peter. So his dad was quite famous. And with Bernard, so it's a very long story, and we just talk easily. We are like we're like a band, basically. I don't think I have to communicate that much with the tracks. It's really with communication. I do stuff, of course, in the tracks, but I'm right there, and it takes a second and half of a second to have a good communication. It's a natural thing for us and we went to so many different projects with so different emotion. We were able to also to have arguments, to be very close, to be like sometimes disagree on things, agree on stuff. And we respect each other quite a lot. And we also have different tastes, which I like. We have different type of backgrounds, different kind of, we just bring that all together. My relationship with Bernard, for me, it's one of my greatest achievements about what we can do with films. I'm lucky. He's so good. I don't know if he's lucky, but I am.
It's interesting that you said earlier that you've worked on many, many films with this director. And then you say that you've worked on many, many films with Bernard. Obviously, that's something that you like, reworking with the same people and building a community out of it.
I think, I don't know how about all my colleagues, but I think we all like to bring, it's a concept of having a band, a family, a group. I think we also do that because we want to be with people. We want to be a village. I don't want to be alone in my room all day. So I'm a bit against today everybody is at home doing their stuff. I can understand that, and I don't criticize it, but I have a studio with other colleagues in a corridor. I open the door and I see other people. I can have that. So Philippe, we started in the mid-90s. I'm 57. I'm going to 33 years of career. So I've been there for quite a long time right now. So it's always great also to discover new filmmakers. I just want to do that too. I want to discover other filmmakers. But doing films with people for so long time, it's just a gift, really, and it's family. I like Philippe, the director. We did so many films, and I also follow his obsession about. A filmmaker is obsessed about things, and you follow his obsession. It's crazy. It's interesting.
That's awesome. It's interesting that you say that you like working in the same building with people, because one of the reasons that we started this podcast is because, like you, I started in the 90s. When you're learning, or even when you're established and you're stuck on something, you can walk across the hall to another editor, another mixer, and be like, have you ever tried to do this? How do you get your brain over this? Now, so many people are working at home.
Yeah.
That you can't walk across the hall. Well, that's why we started this podcast, so people can't be a fly on the wall and try and learn socially that way. But it's great that you're trying to keep being in the same building.
Your podcast and what's happening with at the MPSC too, it's so important, but you're right, because we need contact. And, older generation, they were editing in films. They had to do, it was crazy. It needed to be so many people for so long, we all knows about the time it took to do a film like Apocalypse Now. They were doing for months and months and months. So now the world have changed so much. And on that, we still need a level of community, a level of communication that it's important to have various way to communicate. Right now, we're doing this interview. We're together in the same room. It's quite different than if we were on Zoom, for instance. We can afford that because we live not that far away with each other. But it's so important, the connection. And thank you for doing that too. It's so important. It's so important. The concept of communication will never only be resolved in a online communication. Only we need to try to do it differently. We do the best we can, but if we have a moment together, it's so important. And that's why I like to do that too, to be in the same corner. And if I can do that more, I will do it. Like, I'm based in Montreal. I did a project last year in Toronto. Even this is so important to be able to mix in another city with other people. I did that quite often in my life that it's a gift to be able to do that too. You met other culture, you met other thinking, it's the diversity of our community is important too, in total. So it's great.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot for talking to me.
Hey, good.
It's great to see you again.
Great to see you again.
Have you been using Subquake by the Cargo Cult? I've had my mind blown by this plugin. I've been able to get the low end to cut through in my mixes in ways I was never able to achieve before. Over the years, I've used a bunch of different low-frequency generator plugins, but Subquake is an entirely different beast. This is not a music plugin that we all have to adapt for our purposes. Subquake was designed for post-production by people working in film and series to solve the problems that other plugins were never built to handle. Subquake pushes your sub sounds forward, making them feel huge, but it keeps everything in spec with its own built-in filters and limiters, all within this single plugin. It is also repeatable and reliable, meaning your rumble won't change each time you play back the scene. You can even punch in on a rumble tail with no snaps or clicks. Gunshots are suddenly tight and they punch. Explosions shake the room, and rumbles have ridiculously long tails. The Cargo Cult recently released version 1.1 of Subquake, which is a free update for existing users. It has a new UI option featuring a more simplistic interface with recognizable knobs to quickly navigate to what you need to get to. Or you can still dig in deep with the full graphical UI showing you every detail of what is happening. It also comes with a treasure trove of presets, including a new category specifically for post mixers to get you where you want to go in short order. Don't fall into the trap of delivering boring ho-hum sub. Add character and shape to your mixes by having more impact from less signal. Get Subquake and shake the plaster right off the walls. Head to thecargocult.nz to learn more. The cool thing about each of the interviews in this episode is that all of the people I talk to are just wonderful folks. I want to hang out with them all day. Sylvain was so much fun to hang out with. During TIFF, I got a bunch of emails from sound people saying they were in town to support a film showing as part of the festival. I was able to find a time where everybody could meet and get together and hang out. We met at a pub in the afternoon, about 25 people that had traveled from Germany, Sweden, England, Quebec, the USA, and even some locals were there to hang out with the sound community. We had multiple past Oscar winners hanging out with people in town for their first or second film. I booked the pub for 2 hours, but many people stayed for up to 4 hours. It was a great time. Two of the people I met at this gathering were Tove Lidman and Therese Gylfe. They were there for a film called Forestera, which ended up winning one of the main awards at TIFF. Their sound work played a large role in that film's triumphs. So we're sitting here in a hotel across the street from where a bunch of the movies at TIFF premiere. We're with Therese Gylfe Tove Lidman.
Nice.
Nice. I got the pronunciation right. So we're in Toronto after screening a film that takes place in Spain You've told me before we started rolling that a lot of the dialogue edit and the dialogue premix was done in California, and yet you're from Sweden, and you did the mix in Sweden.
Yes.
So do you want to pull these strings together? How did you end up on this film? How did you end up working with who you worked with and such?
Yeah.
Tove, do you want to take that first?
Sure. I mean, I feel we're just going to talk like over each other, but it started 2 years ago, I think, when we did our first feature with Ulrika Akander. And it was like this Kenyan-Swedish co-production. One of the producers. We really connected with them, and they enjoyed working with the three of us, and they had this Spanish feature that they were going to do. So they contacted the director and said, hey, we got these 3 women who are really good. And yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
This movie, as I said, takes place in Spain. It's Forestera. It premiered at TIFF. I really enjoyed this film. It's not a movie that you would immediately think of as a splashy sound film. There's no car chases. Yeah. There's no shoot 'em ups. But the sound is really forced to tell a lot of the story because there are a lot of scenes with sparse dialogue. And there's a lot of scenes that take place inside where the ambiences of outside are keeping the world alive. I understand that you both went on a field recording trip to Spain to get a lot of those ambiences. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Normally we don't start working on a film before the picture is locked. And before the picture lock, we had like a window where we didn't have much to do. And we've always wanted to do field recording for a film and have like our own ambiences in a film. So it was like a perfect opportunity. And also my fiance's parents have an apartment in Spain, so we had like no excuse not to go. We only have a Zoom H6 that we share, but our lovely friend and colleague Niklas Lind, he lent us so much equipment. We had 2 cabin bags filled with equipment with us.
Just a lot of different microphones and hydrophones that we, of course, didn't use in the film, but it was just fun to bring them.
And when we watched the first rough cut of the film, we just fell in love with the film so much, and we felt like the ocean really should be its own character in the film. So to record the atmospheres ourselves just felt like we can get as much control over the atmospheres as possible.
And we made like 10 or 15 different lists of like every scene in the film and just wrote down what kind of ocean sounds we could possibly use.
Yeah, like how close, how big waves, how...
Yeah, if it was pebbles or if it was sand or if it was stormy or calm or... So we had like a long list of different things so we could just go out and listen and then be like, okay, here, let's try here for a while. And we could just sit there. And we went up like really early in the morning before everyone like woke up and the car started going just to get like these, just the waves. And it was just an amazing trip.
Well, the waves are kind of omnipresent. Almost the entire film takes place close to the shore because the main characters are living in an apartment that has a plot point is that you can see the ocean from their balcony. So there's always waves playing, but the tonality of the waves, which you are both obviously in control of, changes in different scenes. Sometimes they're really low and kind of brooding. Sometimes they're wishy-washy and kind of happy waves. Do you want to talk about how you figured out the palette of waves throughout the movie? It seems like maybe that's not a super exciting thing to talk about, but I'm sure a ton of thought was put into that.
Where to begin? There's a lot of different tonalities in the different scenes also.
First of all, when we went to Spain to record the atmospheres, when we were in the apartment, we realized that the ocean was always present. Like even if you were inside and the doors were closed and windows were closed, you always heard the ocean. Like super loud, even though it was quiet. So we wanted to get that same feeling. It was very inspirational to this film. And we spoke about the ocean feeling like a character. So we tried to mix the ocean waves sounds with the sounds of breathing. There's one scene where Kata, the main character, sits with her grandpa and he tells her a story and it gets very intimate. The atmospheres in the background is only breathing at one point.
That's very cool.
So it shifts to like make you zoom in the picture and in the scene. And we worked on that so much with like the levels of how much ocean, how much breathing. And that's something that we worked like up until the final export day. Because we sent back and forth to the director and to Ulrika, the sound supervisor. And she's also the sound designer. So we worked on that. Even though she was sitting in Los Angeles, we sent them work in progress, and then they sent notes. So when we were mixing, we all had like a foundation of what we were working on. I think everything changed up until the last minute. Yeah.
So I don't think I actually said what you did on the film. You were the sound editors and re-recording mixers.
Yeah, sound effects editors.
Sound effects editors.
Yeah.
And so how do you, as a pair, divvy up the workload?
Well, we never do it the same on any project. We sort of try to look at the film and just talk about what we think the film needs. And then, of course, try to like incorporate what each of us want to do and what we're excited to do. This particular film, we watched the film and then we divided the film up like in each scene. And then we sat separately and just made like a wish list of like, oh yes, this scene I want to do. And this scene is like, I want to, but it's not a priority. And
we love lists.
We love lists. And then we compare the lists. And sometimes it was like a happy, it just worked that I wanted to do a scene that Therese was maybe not as excited about and vice versa. And the scenes we both really wanted to do, we both did separately. And then we sent them to each other. Yeah, and just try to incorporate each other's ideas. Or maybe we got like a third new idea based off the two different ideas. And yeah, it was just a really fun way to work because I feel in the end, like the entire film feels like we both did everything. But we still have like these little gems that are like, oh, this little part is just...
So what role did Ulrika actually play on this film?
Supervising sound editor and dialogue editor for the film. But
And
also
ADR.
ADR, and also we kind of do sound design together because everything happens in the mix. Like we add all the elements, but then in the mix, all three of us just sit and go crazy with the,
Yeah, and sometimes scenes change, not completely, but it's like we put the foundation, for example, the octopus scene, when they're in the water, when we're underwater. And so we did like a sketch that everybody felt comfortable with. But then when we got in the mix and Ulrika pointed out some things, and then we just ended up changing it, not completely. It's the same like mood, but all the sounds are exchanged because that's just how we work with her in the mix. It's just... the best.
anything can happen.
Yeah, anything can happen. But yeah, so she was the dialogue editor and did all the dialogue, ADR, and then we had...
a girl named Dorothy Lee. She's at Skywalker, and she did a dialogue premix for the film.
Yeah.
So the dialogue was pretty much
Done.
also all good to go when mixing, yeah.
Yeah.
That octopus scene was terrible. Like the sound was wonderful, but that made it terrible when the octopus is being killed off screen. And the whole audience, when I was in it, every impact was doing like a twitch. That was well done, and I don't like you for it.
Wet kitchen towel.
It was just a wet kitchen towel, that's all it took. But also when they're in the water swimming, and then the first time we see the octopus, the person swims by really close to the camera. And that is a really loud sound all of a sudden after this kind of calm, serene scene. And that just leads into this horrible off-camera bludgeoning of an octopus. That was a tough one, but very well played by the sound design. So beside being friends, what is it about your two skill sets and personalities that makes you work well together?
I think we're very similar, and we read each other very well. So I think most of the times we don't really need to talk.
Yeah.
I can look at her and see like, okay, she's getting tired. It's time for me to step in, or also vice versa there.
Or like when some of us have an idea, like if we're on the mixing stage, we can just play something, and then one of us is like, yeah, Yeah, and the other one says like, "Yep, just try it. I know exactly where you're going."
Ulrika once said, like, listening to us during the mixing, we sound like guinea pigs because we're like like those.
That's interesting. I've not experienced that on a mixed stage before. That's a good one. So we've mentioned Ulrika a couple times. You want to talk about how you got connected with her and how you interacted with her on this film?
Yeah, she had worked in Los Angeles for 30 years, and she comes back to Sweden once in a while to visit. And she came to Sweden, and the company we worked at that time had a company party. A colleague of ours introduced us to her.
Yeah. And we just started talking and like exchanged emails and just kept in contact after she went back. And she invited us to sit in at like a loop group thing on the series she worked on. After that, we just continued talking. She sent like templates and stuff for us to look through. And every time she was in Sweden, we just grabbed coffee. And then we suggested that we should come and visit her. And she was like, yeah, sure. How about in 3 months?
And she really became a mentor to us.
Yeah.
Like every time we had questions or anything, we had a Zoom with her. After we visited her, she felt like it was time for us to try and work on a project together. And then she had this Kenyan-Swedish film. Because she knew the directors and the director and actor in that film. So she brought us on, and that project is just a whole other, the workflow and like the sounds and everything is just, it's completely different to this film, because this film is like less is more, and that one was more is more. But yeah, we worked so well together. We had like 3 weeks of pre-mix, just the 3 of us on that film, and it was like the most fun we've had on a project. So when this one came along, we were like, yep, this is a trio.
So you just mentioned that with this film, maybe less is more. There's some really cool sound moments in the film, though. So let's kind of dig into that. Because, as we've said, it's not a huge action film or anything like that. There are moments where sound gets to play a really cool role with super delicate sounds. And there is a plot point within the film that involves lights tinkering on and off. Sometimes the light isn't even on screen, and we just kind of see the light going off, but we hear that little kind of fine, delicate glass sound of it, the fluorescent tubes coming to life, dying, coming to life. That's a really fun thing to be able to do, because you have to figure out a way to get everything down enough for that to cut through. And it's a really cool sound too. It's a sound we all know, but it's a sound that we can't, in general life, actually make on command. So I imagine it's a tricky sound to capture.
Yeah, I think that was like the biggest challenge in the mix, on just getting that level of subtle, like you can hear it, but can you hear it? But just enough that is there, because we did like lower it a lot, because we love when things are subtle.
Yeah.
And then we played it for a couple of colleagues back in Sweden, and just like,
What do you
listen
think?
to this. Yeah, and they were like, what were we supposed to see? So I think that was the biggest challenge for us, like in the mix. And I think that was just how we came up with it. It was just a discussion. I think the director wanted the fluorescent lights. We sent her different kinds of just this tinkering sound to get it right, and just try different things. And I think with the light moving, that was something we actually did before Picture Lock, because she wanted to give the light a sound for the pacing and everything for the edit. And I remember we tried like a lot of different things, but everything,
like a whoosh or a breath
or some tingling sound, but everything just sounded too magical, sort of,
or
and
just put on.
Yeah,
I don't know the word.
I think we just one day when we talked, just had the idea, okay, what if the light itself doesn't have a sound, but it sort of affects the things it touches? And then we sent it to I think it was the first thing we sent to the director, and she just loved it.
Yeah.
So we were really happy about it.
Every time the light goes over something, like the tray shakes a little bit, or
the fridge shuts off, or yeah.
It's funny because when there is a scene in the movie It's near the end, so I'm not going to say it exactly, but where light is moving a lot. I was talking to someone afterwards, and I was like, I bet you they spent 2 weeks trying to figure out the sound of that light. And then in the end, it ended up being not the sound of the light. And so that was going to be my next question. You already answered it. But that was really cool the way you guys approach that, because it's not silent, but it's not the light that's making the noise, which is a super interesting approach for that. Because it is something that, as the viewer, we don't know what we're seeing. And if you did have shimmering chimes or something like that, that would start putting us in a certain headspace. And the way that you guys approached it was perfect for the way that the film approached it, where we don't know what that is. You know, like as a viewer, it's left to each of us to interpret it on our own. And that approach to the sound on it allowed that to happen. Another really cool scene is, a horribly sad scene. Our main character comes home and finds that her grandmother has fallen over. At that point, out cold, where we're not sure. But the grandmother was listening to a small transistor radio, and it's within her clothing. And I can't even imagine having to tackle the sound transformation of it's inner clothing far away, it's inner clothing close. Then we dig into the clothing, we start hearing it a little bit better, then not a little bit better, then we pull it out, we start hearing it better, then it's brought right up close, and then it goes off. And the amount of filtering that must have been done to make that play perfect. Do you want to talk about tackling that?
Thank you so much. First of all, it's because, we sat with that a lot. And I think in the end, it's just, speakerphone, an amazing plugin. But I think we have like 7 different types of sound for that radio that we just sort of
Go between,
go between. But that was also something we sat with like until the very end, like the levels. Should we change the level when we're up here to when we're close, or should it be like a minimal? Should we be realistic or not? Or
because the thing is that song is so important for the film because it's reoccurring and it comes back in like different locations. So it was so important that you recognize the song.
Yeah,
it had to be loud for you to remember it, but not too loud because it's such a small little speaker it's coming from. And I think the whole atmosphere becomes really surreal in that scene, and I think that helped. Because when the sound of the storm just started increasing, it was fine for the little speaker to be really loud as well, I think.
Yeah, and I think we also try to mix down like the environments right before she comes up the stairs. It's sort of stormy, and we hear the ocean a lot, and it's windy. But as soon we come up the stairs, it's very, very quiet. And I think we did that just because of
the song.
Because it has to like stick to your head because you have to remember it later on.
Thank you very much for talking to me today. It was great meeting you, and hopefully our cross paths again soon.
Thank you so much for this.
If you are a regular listener to Tonebenders, you've heard me mention the Mille miniature omnidirectional microphones from Chris Trevino. I've talked about how I love the neutral frequency response and how they are ultrasonic capable, allowing me to really bend and shape and have a lot of fun with my recordings in post-production. Each pair of mics is handmade by Chris Trevino, a practicing field recordist and a really engaged member of the sound community. He uses high-quality components and puts a lot of work into making and testing each mic to ensure they live up to his own high standards. The Minis are available in both XLR and 1/8-inch versions to accommodate any kind of recorder you might have. Between their compact form and robust build quality, they work great with a variety of workflows, from everyday carry recording kits to expeditions where every gram counts and you want to keep your pack weight light. Maybe my favorite thing about both versions of the Minis is the price. They are extremely affordable. At $130 American for the plug-in power stereo pairs and $150 for XLR pairs, they offer a lot of value. I suggest you give them a try. At this price point, it is a no-brainer. To learn more, head to chrisatrevino.com/store or click on the link in the description of this episode in your podcast app. Okay, here's the final interview for this episode. Although I saw the film The Blue Trail at TIFF, I held off on doing the interview until I got to Mexico City for the Tonebenders event there in October. The sound team behind The Blue Trail is based in Mexico City, and I was lucky enough to have them invite me to hang out with them while I was in town so we could do this interview. This is a really interesting film for sound, as you will hear. So let's throw to María Alejandra Rojas and Arturo Salazar from The Blue Trail. I'm sitting here at SAE Institute in Mexico. I saw a film called The Blue Trail while at TIFF, and it's about an elderly person in a futuristic society where they put the elderly off in a different area, and it's a mystery as if that area is good or bad. And we follow one character who's decided that she's not going to play by the rules, and she's going on the run from society almost as a whole. The film takes place in the near future, so it is a sci-fi movie, but it doesn't have a lot of the trappings of a typical sci-fi movie. And I'm really happy today to talk to two members of the sound team. Today I have María Alejandra Rojas and Arturo Salazar. Welcome to Tonebenders to you both.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, team.
Can you guys tell me about your roles on the film, how you divided up the work, and what each of you kind of tackled?
We're both sound designers and sound supervisors for this movie. How we divided? Well, this is something that wasn't just for this movie. Like, we have been working for maybe 5 years or 6 years together. And we realized when we met that we were both good at different things. So I'm more in charge of editorial and supervising also from a lot of the part of communications with the team, with directors, with producers.
Usually I'm more hands-on on the mixing part of things. We usually work with a lot of editors. We like to work with teams, depending on the size of the project and depending on a lot of things. But when María Maja, that's how we call her, when Maja is working with the sound team, I tend to receive pre-mix, show her what's going on, what's working, what's not working. We bounce back with the team, and that's how we flow. I mean, every day she's getting better at mixing. So one day I think she won't need me, but for now it's working well in this structure we have, I guess. We share a lot of the mouse and the keyboard. We're always taking the keyboard from each other's hands just to do something different because we had an idea that can't be expressed with words. So just give me the keyboard.
Yeah, exactly. So that's basically how it works. Also, we are also re-recording mixers, not for this movie, but it works the same. So we just bounce each other from side to side to the console and to the mouse and the keyboard. Take turns because I think we have a very similar taste and workflow. So it's just a matter of trusting. Let me just try this, and then we bounce each other the idea, and then we continue.
The Blue Trail, as I mentioned, it's a sci-fi film at its heart. It's in a near future. Things are ominous. We're not sure if the government is really what they're saying. Some people, like the main character's family, trust, oh, you're going to go to a wonderful place. Other people, at one point, she's at a kind of a market and she hears that this family was taken away in a negative way. So she's going on the run. It's a sci-fi film, but it doesn't have the trappings of a sci-fi film. How did you go about kind of communicating it's futuristic without, having laser guns and stuff like that? It seems like that would be a big challenge.
I think that first there's a word that it comes to my mind that is maybe not just futuristic, but retrofuturistic. I think that's the first thing that we talked about with the director was more in...
Even more than retrofuturistic, I think we were talking about Latin American futurism, no? Yeah, we're talking about okay, we've seen the future portrayed in amazing Hollywood films where technology is on its peak But what happens with developing countries when that same future comes, no? I remember that many of the ideas we were bouncing, it wasn't about the technology, but it was about the friction that this technology brings to a place like the Amazon. I think it's very fun how Gabriel uses the future.
Gabriel being the director.
Gabriel Mascaro, the director. We love how he uses the future and in his fictions to create something that's a little bit like what we lived in right now, but also a little bit how it could be. I know it's a kind of Black Mirror effect. Some people compare this understanding of how this future could be in a country where you don't have the same access to the same technology. So how would a virtual Bible would be, I don't know, in 20 years, or maybe right now. It could be right now. That's the thing. That's the fun part of playing with these futures. But there's something, and I would like to mention that we talked from the start, and that was something that Gabriel thought and we thought as well, that the sounds of the future, and we didn't want it to be too technological. We didn't want it to be like tweet, 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 tweet. We didn't want that UI sound of technology wasn't part of our aim, because technology every day it's going more towards not making that much sound. And we're focusing on other stuff. Like every time that we tried a beep, we looked at each other and we said, no, that's not the sound. We're not looking. That's not the kind of future we're living here. It's Gabriel's world, like going into his head. Like I think a lot of the sound design has to do with his ideas.
And I think we did try we did try to add some sounds more technological, and it didn't work. And it just took out everything from the world that he was building. And the thing is that the story was like always changing. It wasn't like the same story that at the beginning from the script, from the editing, and then in the post-production, it was like constantly changing. So no, when we tried that, we realized that the story wasn't going in that direction. And I think that was like really cool to try, but it didn't work.
Sometimes, you have to try things to really understand why they don't work, and maybe they'll show you the right path.
It's a really interesting way to look at the future without having to spending the budget on CG effects. And like, it's kind of our world. It's kind of like a flooded version of our world also. And so boats play a major role in it. And the boats are purposely not futuristic. They're kind of like from the past, and that's how these people are able to survive, because they have the old technology. But the boats sound amazing in this film. And there are even plot mechanisms within it where the boats break down, so you have to have the dying engine and then bring the boat back to life. Do you want to talk about your philosophy of what the boats sounded like in the near future?
I have no idea how boats like actually sound. I'm not a boat person, so this was very, very interesting to work with. Because the thing is that Gabriel Mascaro, the director, was very obsessed with the boat and with the steering wheel. So he drew us the mechanism that he was imagining from the boats. So he tried to like explain what he was thinking about, like, because it was very important that it was a shitty boat. And it's also because it reflects a lot of how the society lives and exactly how they use their resources. So he was very, very obsessed with this mechanism. So he was like trying to imagine like a giant bike with this chain. It was very important to have a very clear difference between the boat of Cadu and the boat of Roberta, which was a little bit bigger and more like new. This was one of the things that we had to rework. I don't know how many times. I don't know if you remember how many times, but it was a lot. And Gabriel was super involved. He was always sending sounds that he loved for us to rip off and trying to use and then rework on those or trying to replicate. So it was actually a very, very teamwork, because then we had the sound effects editor, Arnulfo, and he was great. He was like, oh, I think I have an idea. And he used like a sound of a garbage truck, and he really, really worked with that layer. And then when we received it, I remember that we kind of heard it was a truck, yeah. So we had to then rework on that a lot in the premix. And
it was a lot of fun because, I mean, there's a lot of elements. It sums many of the disciplines that you need in sound design to build a film. We had great Foley to give that feeling of the wood, of the surfaces, of everything. But also we had a lot of different engines of old boats, of old cars, not all the time the same engine worked. Like there was a shot where the garbage truck worked great, but the next shot, you could really tell it was a truck. So we changed it for the old boat. we're all the time playing with those textures that Gabriel really knew what that boat used to sound like. Because, and I think I'm getting ahead of on this conversation, but we had to redo all the sounds in this film. So there was a lot of world building in that sense. So yeah, the boat was one of the elements that took the most out of our creativity, I guess. And yeah, thinking outside the box and mixing things together and just giving life to it. And I love what you were saying about when Gabriel was drawing the boat, so we could understand how it should sound. So he turns on this, so this will make this chain move, and that would make this thing drop water, and that it was so all from his imagination. But it was amazing just to have a director explain to us a mechanism that didn't exist and trying to make it work with sound. That was so much fun.
Let's step off on what you just said, that every sound had to be recreated. We're including dialogue in that statement, correct?
100% of dialogue.
So the whole movie was ADR.
Gabriel, the director, doesn't like to tell his tricks, doesn't like to reveal the tricks behind the magic in the movies. But I think that for the American industry, this is an old trick. The approach of Gabriel, he loves that control, that creative control he has when he can dub everything. He dubbed the whole movie, and we had to work with, like, it was more than 5 different studios, dubbing studios, Cuba, in Brazil. There were like 4 in Brazil, here in Mexico. It was crazy. A very important thing here. The production sound was really good. The production sound was really, really good. But it's a creative decision. It's a creative decision to have control of nuances that only directors that do that know how to. He changed a lot of dialogues. He changed a lot of things.
He was constantly changing the story. So that includes, of course, like all the dialogues. I was in charge of all the ADR supervision. It was the most challenging part.
I believe it.
Because I don't know how many times I redo the dialogue editing. There was always some reference needed for some actor, and everything needed to be like super separate, and so many characters and so many studios involved. And the most of the characters were in the Amazonia, in Manaus. And there's no studio in Manaus. So that was crazy. At one point, they just decided like maybe to send some sound recordist, some sound mixer to record all the dialogues, but it was so many people that it was impossible because it was like, I don't know, maybe 3 months of ADRs. And in Manaus, they found like a podcast booth. That was something that scared us because it was like, this is going to be a movie. I was asking for pictures of microphones and pictures of the booth, trying to be in contact with them in Portuguese. It was great. I mean, I appreciate now all the work, but it was so much work. And there was one character that we had like really, really struggle because she was trying to speak Portuguese, which is Roberta. And Roberta doesn't speak Portuguese. She's a Cuban actress. So when we were in the ADRs, she was struggling a lot. So we had to also, of course, try AI. And that was part of the process also. It didn't work, of course, because there's no prompt for AI to speak in Portuñol, which is a mix in Spanish and Portuguese. And that accent, it was just like impossible. So that part was very, very tricky, and it ended up very, very well. It was just a simple ADR, classic ADR for every character. The hard part was that Gabriel just was sending a lot of takes, like maybe 100 or 150 takes for each phrase, sometimes even words. So that was crazy. I don't know how much. I think I actually, now I can say that I speak Portuguese after that. Like I knew something, but after that, I am fluent in Portuguese.
And there's something really interesting in the approach of Gabriel, because that's something I want to point out. He has a really cool instinct on how things work. He told us, no, it's really fast to do ADR. No, you don't have to worry. We'll do ADR for the whole movie, but you don't have to worry. You just have to record, and your waveform needs to look the same as it looked in the reference. And that's
It's easy.
It's easy. And so he was just telling me, yeah, it's so easy, because if it doesn't look the same, it's not good. That's it.
Make it look the same.
Bro, you have no idea. But at the same time, he was right. Like when he was directing the ADR, just by seeing the waveform, he knew it was working or not. He was mixing, his instinct of knowing it sounded well with his vision of seeing the waveform and understanding, okay, it looks the same, it will work. And he sent us the ADR because we weren't present in those ADRs. So he was present in most of them. And when he sent us what he recorded, it worked. It worked.
It really did work. Like, I didn't know when watching the film that it was all ADR'd. It's impressive.
Because I've done this only twice. I've worked with films that were completely dubbed twice. And I think there's a thing with the consistency you get with the performance that your ear won't question it because from the first minute you presented it that way. It's easier to tell an ADR in a scene where there is only one word that is ADR only than when you do the whole thing. There are things that the characters aren't saying and we change the whole thing. And you won't notice because from the first minute, the consistency was there. So I think there's a thing with consistency.
Thank you very much for talking to me today. I realize English isn't your first language, so I appreciate you speaking to me in English. We were saying before we started rolling that it's a Canadian interviewing a Colombian and a Mexican about a Brazilian film. What a world we live in that's possible. Thank you very much for talking to me today. Hopefully we get to talk again soon.
Thank you so much for this invitation. We really appreciate it. And yeah, that's actually really cool.
Thanks a lot, team.
I had an absolute blast hanging out with everyone in this episode. If you plan to be at TIFF next year, please reach out and let me know. If there are enough people, I will gladly get another sound gathering together at TIFF 2026. This Black Friday, Sound Ideas is offering its biggest savings of the year. Enjoy 50% off all proprietary sound libraries and memberships. Sound Ideas' best deal yet on world-class audio collections. But that's just the beginning. Each week, Sound Ideas will spotlight one of their most popular libraries with an exclusive limited-time discount. Visit sound-ideas.com regularly to discover which library is featured and grab these weekly specials before they're gone. Tonebenders is produced by me, Timothy Muirhead. Theme music is by Jim Guthrie. You can reach me via email through info@tonebenderspodcast.com. Follow Tonebenders on Instagram to stay on top of new episodes. If you like the show, you can help us out by spreading the word to your friends and colleagues. Or leave us a tip. Just go to tonebenderspodcast.com and click support.